And welcome to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And today's show, we welcome back a guest for the third time.
Yes, Bob Blackburn, the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Historical Society, is back with us for another show. We're going to get an update from him on what's going on out at his location and what's new and exciting going on out there, even though what they usually talk about is something that's old.
Always interesting and engaging. Bob Blackburn, today's guest on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
It's time, America. Our energy future can be ours again with American natural gas. We have an abundant, affordable supply, unrivaled anywhere. $1 billion a day for importing foreign oil isn't just a statistic, it's an opportunity. 30% lower greenhouse emissions isn't a pipe dream, it's a choice. Now is the time. Chesapeake, America's champion of natural gas.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Good look at the test, man.
I know, it was awesome. What's wrong?
A heart attack could shatter everything. A simple heart scan could save it. Schedule your $50 heart scan today at St. Anthony, the most trusted experts in cardiovascular care.
In Oklahoma, we enjoy a high quality of life due to good, well-paying jobs. Commercial real estate professionals play a significant role in bringing new businesses and investments to Oklahoma. The commercial real estate community has come together to market Oklahoma's commercial properties nationwide through a free public website, okcommercialproperty.com. We are invested in keeping Oklahoma strong and growing because economic development ensures quality of life.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today, we're really pleased to welcome back to the set of The Verdict Bob Blackburn, who's the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Historical Society. Bob did his undergraduate work at Southwestern State University in Weatherford. He did his master's and PhD work at Oklahoma State University. He joined the Oklahoma Historical Society in 1980 and has been there ever since, and since 1999 has been the boss, been the Executive Director. He's had a varied career. He is indeed an author and is just working on a new book. He is a frequent guest on shows on the History Channel and other like programs. He's been a lecturer in a number of places around the country. He gives his time freely to civic and charitable organizations. And we're really pleased to have him back to tell us what's going on at the Historical Society. Welcome back.
Thank you, Ken. Mayor, good to see you again.
How's attendance been at the History Center this summer?
It's down a little bit, but I think most cultural institutions are down with gas prices high. Mm-hmm. People just aren't traveling as much, mm-hmm. But ironically and thankfully, attendance is up with special events. We're hosting more events than ever. This year, we will have more than 300 paid rentals of the History Center. It's working out well for family reunions, class reunions, corporate parties, weddings. Mm-hmm. Almost every Saturday night for the next year is booked for weddings.
My goodness.
So it's become a popular place to come together. And we always wanted it to be a community center, mm-hmm. where we gathered to celebrate who we are, where we've been, what we share in common. And I'm very pleased that that's happened.
What exhibits do you have right now at the History Center?
The newest right now is an exhibit called Roy Clark, Hee Haw and Country Humor. And it's about the television show Hee Haw. That started in 1969 with very much an Oklahoma influence. Mm-hmm. Of course, Roy Clark has lived in Oklahoma since 1971. The show was owned by the Gaylords from 1981 on until it went off the air in '94, and then Oklahomans starred on it as special guests, and so we have Garth Brooks shirt, overalls, and hat that he wore on the show. A lot of stuff from Roy Clark, Janet Jay, the girl with the blue fiddle. Some of you may remember, but that's a lot of fun. But we also have exhibits ongoing on all topics. We have a new one on fashion in Oklahoma history, 100 years of fashion. So that just went up last week.
You always got something new. How often do you try to have a new exhibit?
About twice a year. We like to open an exhibit. Right now we're working on some new exhibits that excite me. I'm the curator on one on the oil and gas industry in Oklahoma. Most people think of an oil and gas exhibit and think geology. Well, we're starting with the retail side of it, and we're going only as far back as the 1940s. We're going to show the changes in oil and gas since the 1940s. Of course, that's affecting us here in Oklahoma City right now. But we're going to start with the 1958 Kerr-McGee filling station, right after they bought Deep Rock, another Oklahoma company, and then natural gas at the other end of the exhibit, and then in between, how do you get gas to put in your car or gas that comes out of your stove? Then an exhibit on our riverboat that sank in 1838 in the Red River. We've completed the underwater archaeology and pulled out the paddle wheels and the axles and the cargo, and so that'll open soon. And now we've started one on banking and commerce in Oklahoma to tell the story of the business community.
How do you get the ideas, and once you get an idea, how long does it usually take you to move from an idea to an exhibit you can walk in and observe?
Usually for the big exhibits like oil and gas and the riverboat, about 2 years. And our exhibit designers are out of Leicester, England, Haley Sharp. So we've completed the design phase, we have construction documents, and so that will go into fabrication and curation soon. But we just launched one that's probably a better example of a short-term exhibit. We want to open a new exhibit next May, so May of 2012, and it's going to be called Oklahoma at the Movies. And it's all parts of the movie industry. It's going to the movies, something we can all share. We all have experiences of going to the movies. For us in Oklahoma City, going to the State and the Midwest and the Criteria and other movie houses. But then we're going to do Oklahomans on the silver screen and then Oklahomans behind the camera. So this will be a full exhibit of several thousand square feet, and hopefully will open next May. And so that will be a fast moving exhibit.
Well, we've had Gray Fredrickson on the show, who's one of your, who will be a part of that exhibit as in the producer category.
That's right.
And then, of course, a friend of mine from high school and college, Stan Rosenfield,
yes,
is in the public relations side of the industry, and I noticed that you've listed him as somebody that's going to be featured as well.
And he'll be an advisor. He has kind of bought into what we're trying to do about crossroads of creativity as a general theme for a lot of the things we're doing now. And he really saw what we were trying to do, and of course, he represents people like George Clooney and Tom Cruise and a variety of others, and so he's one of our main contacts in Hollywood.
Well, he's a really fine guy too, and with the deep Oklahoma connections. I sat down with him a while back, and we chatted a little while, and he was able, Mick, to go back to the 1953 Oklahoma City Indian AA baseball team that played here when he and I were both boys, and could go down the roster and tell you without looking at anything, tell you who played first, who played second, who played, because he was just a regular attender at Oklahoma City Indian baseball games. Quite a fun guy.
And I guess there's a lot of Oklahoma-born actors who'll be highlighted.
Oh yes. We'll start with the Silence with Will Rogers, of course, Tom Mix, who was discovered working on the Wild West shows in northern Oklahoma. And then we'll go all the way to the present day, so we'll still talk about Mary Kay Place. Is an intriguing person, of course. I've always been a fan of hers, but she's really bought in. But Tim Blake Nelson is probably one of the more recent stars that's really making an impact in Hollywood. But in between are the James Garners, and Patty Page was in the movies. And so we'll go on and show this crossroads of creativity for 100 years, the talent that Oklahoma has had. It's just an amazing story, and I'm always motivated by these projects because it makes me proud of Oklahoma, and it always surprises me, and I have get real satisfaction out of sharing those stories with others.
Switching gears slightly, I know you rely on a lot of volunteers to help run the History Center. What's the best way for someone to get involved in that, and how many volunteers do you utilize?
Right now on our rosters we have about 150 volunteers in the research section and about 100 in the museum. Some people prefer working with people who walk in, say, where are you from? And I love these volunteers. I go out every day and thank them just because they're volunteering their time. And they'll welcome people, get them oriented. They work special events. So the night that we had Roy Clark, we also had other musical stars there. And so the volunteers get to help with them. But then in the research section, we're launching a new project now of indexing much of our photograph collection. And so volunteers can go in and get the photographs from the Journal Record or photographs from Jim Margot's collection or others. And they go in and they get to identify, and so it's like a nostalgic trip through our own lives to work with these materials. So we rely on volunteers. Without the volunteers, we would not be operating at full strength right now.
And what's the best way for someone to get plugged in if they'd like to volunteer?
There is our website is okhistory.org, and someone can go onto the website and there's a button there for volunteer services.
How do you determine what kind of artifacts or memorabilia or things that you're interested in trying to preserve, and then how do you go about finding it, securing it?
We have a planning document. In fact, I drafted the first version of it in 1989, and it's kind of a technical sounding name, a historic context review. It's an internal document that breaks Oklahoma history down into topics. So we have 12 main themes. Then we break it down into chronological time periods, so empire, early territorial, early statehood, late statehood. And then we go by geographical areas because we are a statewide agency. So we use these three contexts to review our collections. Where are we weak? Ironically, we're weak in business history. So we launch a new project on banking and commerce. So right now I have a staff member, Michael Hightower, who's working with us, going out and interviewing bankers. And then we're pulling in artifacts, collections, because we're trying to beef that up. Ironically, oil and gas was weak. So now we're going out to families like Garmin Kimmel's family, and we're bringing in Garmin Kimmel's material and tell his story, Jack Zink's story in Tulsa, of course the companies that we know now. So we try to target projects to give us an emphasis in a collections area. We probably average a collection a day though, coming in the front doors.
Really?
I have a meeting next week with a man who has a Wilson Company archival collection of course, we all grew up with Wilson Company being a major industrial presence in the city. This man has collected all this material on Wilson. He says this is the time to get it into your collections. I agreed.
Bob Blackburn with the Oklahoma History Center. Our guest today on The Verdict. Will be right back.
The thing that has made the most sense for me is realizing that I am still an educator, and that is what I do at the Chickasaw Nation. I'm Dr. Amanda Cobb-Greetham. I'm a historian, and I'm Chickasaw. The Chickasaw Cultural Center is amazing. It is a very, very special place devoted to the sharing and to the celebration of Chickasaw history and culture. State-of-the-art technology, exhibits that are not like anything I've ever seen. The Spirit Forest is incredible, and you feel as if you have actually just walked into a forest with huge trees all around you. It's timeless, and yet it's sort of also representative of our time depth, to really just sort of reach through time and touch the past. By the end of the exhibits, you really have a sense of Chickasaw cultural and political resurgence, and the extent to which we are a healthy, dynamic, and vital tribe today. Chickasaws have always been an inclusive people. This is something for the whole community and for the state of Oklahoma.
Every time our country imports energy, we're saying we've lost confidence in our own.
But Oklahomans know, under the land of the free lies the energy to be brave.
Advanced technology has led to vast discoveries of oil and natural gas that have doubled America's supply estimates.
Using one well to do the work of 10 in half the time, we're proving that America's best answers will always come from inside our borders.
Oklahoma's oil and natural gas industry, advancing our state, empowering our nation.
When you have something important to communicate, it becomes clear that there's a lot of competition for your audience's attention. So how can your message stand out and actually resonate with your audience? Legal Graphics has the answers. The team at Legal Graphics will work with you to plan, design, and even test your presentation to ensure your message will be heard and remembered. Call Legal Graphics today to schedule an appointment. The readiness is all.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. We are visiting with Bob Blackburn at the Oklahoma History Center. It's been an exciting time at the History Center with the new building opening up in the last few years, so many wonderful exhibits, and I've got to think hundreds of thousands of people now, mostly Oklahomans, but not necessarily so, have visited the center and enjoyed all the work that you and your staff have accomplished out there. So let me start this segment by just congratulating you on all the great work. Every time I go out there, I'm amazed, and sometimes it's nostalgic, and sometimes it's just an admiration for the history and the accumulation of artifacts. It's just a wonderful place, and a lot of audio-visual things out there. So I urge people to get out and see more of it if they've not.
And it's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
cool out there.
It is.
Let's talk for a moment about the early days of Oklahoma history. What do you think surprises most people when you talk about the early days of statehood and those early days of the 20th century?
I think what surprises many people is how agricultural we were. It was a rural state. When we became a state in 1907, we had 5 congressmen, and probably 90% of the population lived either on farms or in small towns.
And about what was the population then, just approximately?
Oh gosh.
Half of what it is
Good
now?
question. Oh, less than half. Less than half. But things started changing in the 20th century. Of course, the city started growing like Oklahoma City. Fastest period of growth was 1898 to 1910. Tulsa's about 10 years behind us. It would have been growing the quickest in the teens and 20s. And other cities started growing and people started leaving the farms. But I think that surprises some people how rural we were in the beginning. But it was good for our economy because farming and ranching was doing very well at the beginning of the century. Fastest growing state in the nation. We ended up at 9 congressmen by 1930. Then we started a steady decline, and now we're back to 5, probably where we should have been all along. But the 2 booms of farm and ranch and oil and gas, of course, both were drawing people to rural Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. They were drawing them to Seminole County and Carter County and Kay County. In the counties where they were finding oil, then of course people were going out to where they could grow the wheat and the cotton and the corn. And so it was rural. Well, our transition to urban was delayed by these twin booms. We did not really start becoming an urban state until the 1940s and 50s. And of course you deal with Oklahoma City policies and what's good for growth. We're a young city and we're still dealing with many of those growing pains, because we were so diverse and so spread out, and we're compressing so much change into a short period. You know, we think about our own lives. My grandmother, who helped raise me, was born in 1893. But yet, that's Oklahoma history, just in 3 little short generations here, and how much change we've gone through. So when people get discouraged about lack of progress in the state or want to point fingers why we're not developing quicker, we've developed pretty quickly. And we've changed a lot. And fortunately, we've had good public servants who says, I want to help guide this state in how we're changing and how we're dealing with the challenges and finding those opportunities.
Because we were one of the last states to form, what did they get right? In other words, they had a lot of models, you know, in the 19th century about establishing states and maybe some problems that had occurred. By the time the 20th century got along and Oklahoma and some other states were finally being established, what went into our Constitution, what went into our state government that you probably think they got right?
Well, one thing that fits well with today's climate is fiscal conservatism. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma, despite what some people say, is a low-tax state. And it's always been that way. Alfalfa Bill Murray sometimes gets the reputation of being a, quote, progressive. Well, he was not in terms of today's politics of liberal conservative. He was very conservative. And I use the term conservative populism. In some ways, that conservative nature, I think, created a good bedrock, a foundation for all of us. The populism was good in terms of really relying on the individual, but in many ways it was anti-corporate. It was a fear of central authority. Alfalfa Bill kept the New Deal from coming to Oklahoma for 3 years, and there were no New Deal grants coming to the state until he went out of office and E.W. Marlin is elected. He says, bring the New Deal to the state. So what you hear from Tea Party advocates about turn the federal money away, Alfalfa Bill was doing that very thing in the early 1930s. And he had the same attitudes about the central government in 1907 as the father of the state constitution and our first Speaker of the House. So I think some people are surprised how consistent that conservative populism has been through our history.
You mentioned while we were off the air that you have some traveling exhibits around the state that folks can look at without having to come to Oklahoma City. Can you tell us a little bit about that and maybe what's on the drawing board for that?
Yes, sir. One thing we do is reach out to all Oklahomans and really beyond the state borders to share the story of Oklahoma. We have an exhibit in Turkey, Texas right now. We were able to work with the family of Bob Wills. His 3 daughters and several nieces are still very active. We started working with them a year ago about telling the story of Bob Wills, Western swing, the role of radio and dance and music and this combination of country and jazz and gospel and big band sound that Bob Wills pioneered. Well, they donated the Bob Wills collection to us. We now have the largest collection of Bob Wills. But we agreed to do an exhibit in Turkey, Texas, which
I don't even know where that is.
It is in the Texas Panhandle,
okay,
in the kind of the broad Red River Valley. If you go to West Texas and then go out to nowhere, you're not going to get to Turkey, Texas by going anywhere else. Canyon, Texas is probably the biggest town nearby, but they donated that material to us. So now when people go to Turkey, Texas to see the Bob Wills Festival, they now know that we have exhibits and collections of Bob Wills. We took the rock and roll exhibit to Tulsa, onto the campus of OSU Tulsa. In about 2 weeks, we will open the Jim Halsey exhibit and country music at the Tulsa Historical Society. We have exhibits on Anita Bryant and other women in rock and roll at Pioneer Woman, which is one of our museums in Ponca City. And we're doing new exhibits now at Fort Gibson. We're doing new exhibits at Fort Towson on the riverboat that sank in the Red River in 1838. So we're pretty active around the state and really around the nation. I'll be going to the Autry Museum in October to talk about taking some exhibits to LA.
Let's talk for a moment about the riverboat that was discovered buried in the Red River. Remind me, when was that discovered and when did they go back and do the research and your involvement in all of that? Because I know it was pretty in-depth.
Well, we think from sometime in the 1840s to 1991, the riverboat was high and dry. It was buried in about 20 foot of sand. 1991, the Red River flooded again, 2 miles across. When it goes down, the channel had moved north and it cut away that sandbank. And some fishermen came to us in 1999, so 8 years later, said there's something sticking out of the water you should look at. We looked at it, we thought it was significant, brought in archaeologists from the Institute of Nautical Archaeology, and they said this is an old riverboat. Don't know. They did the research. We spent 10 years on that. Turns out it's the oldest riverboat ever found in American waters. Sank in 1838, a boat manufactured or crafted in 1835. We now know who owned it. We know where it had been, the captains. We know the cargo. We have the manifest from the goods they were bringing up to Fort Towson. And then we did wet archaeology for almost 9 years, pulling out the paddle wheels, the axles, the cargo, and we will have 2 exhibits on that one riverboat. There will be 2 books on that riverboat. It is so significant. And so that's what we do. We collect it, which we collected the information and the artifacts. We're going to preserve it for all time and then share it through exhibits and books, website. So I'm real pleased with the way that project has turned out.
Was the Red River a nice corridor for boats like that, or was this the only one that ever tried and didn't make it, or were there a lot that made it?
It was a dangerous corridor, and it would have only been navigable in the spring and early summer. There was a landing where the Kaimishi flows into the Red, and that's where this boat was trying to get, and it sank about 2 miles short of its destination. It got that far. And so there were regular riverboat runs from the Choctaw Nation in North Texas to New Orleans every year. The Arkansas was more navigable, longer during the year, and of course Fort Gibson, Muskogee was the head of navigation there. That's one reason Muskogee was the biggest city in the Twin Territories until Oklahoma City started growing after the turn of the century.
Bob Blackburn, our guest today on The Verdict. Bob, thank you so much for coming on. Always a wealth of information and interesting guest.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Kent and I'll have a final word when we get back.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict, wrapping up the show with Bob Blackburn. Interesting that Bob is even interested in all the tapes of this show. The Verdict for over 500 episodes will be on display. If insomnia is an issue at some point in the future, they can watch our shows.
We're including our pre-statehood tapes as well.
We have a couple of websites to draw your attention to. You can get more information about Bob Blackburn and the History Center at okhistory.org. That's okhistory.org. And we'd love to have you go to our website and tell us about a guest or a subject matter that you'd like to see discussed on this show. Our website is theverdict.tv. That's theverdict.tv. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We're so glad you chose to be with us here this morning. We look forward to visiting with our future guests and obviously having you as part of our audience. We'll see you next time.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.